Hi everyone, this is Terrence of the TSK Jesus Freak channel, and in this video I'm going to talk about the concept of having a newsletter. Okay, a newsletter is another way to protect your brand. Okay, this is brand protection. Okay, to protect your brand. Especially if you're living in, if you are in the Ancapistan, or even in the broader libertarianistan, or even if you're in the Reformistan camp in Christianity. So if you're in those camps, in those types of environments, and you have a kind of a decent following, then you should have a newsletter. You should have a newsletter. You should have a website. Now, I have a website, and I'm probably going to do some kind of more personal newsletter, in the future. This is going to be years out for the personal one, but for different reasons. But if you start having a following, then you should really consider having a newsletter. And when you do a newsletter, do not use MailChimp. MailChimp is way too big, and they don't care. Okay? They don't care. They're too big. They can get rid of you. You Capistani folks, and you Reformistan folks. So they can get rid of us. And we just built this whole big huge list, and you have to end up going to the whole process of going to a different newsletter service. So that being said, and you don't really, and here's another thing is, you do not want to give out your information about who you are dealing with in terms of the newsletter. It's better to pay the lowest amount that you can possibly do it without giving their information. So what do I mean then? So like if I'm, so like say I'm, for example, I set up a MailChimp account and they offer a free newsletter service, but at the very tail end of the email it says, brought to you by MailChimp. You do not want to do that, okay? You don't want to name the company in your newsletter. If you have to pay, then pay the minimum amount to get that off, okay? It's always better to pay the minimum amount to take that little portion off because of censorship. Now, if I had a free MailChimp and MailChimp newsletter thing, service / product, and it says on the bottom of the newsletter, it says, brought to you by MailChimp. That is the least, that's a very good way to get censored, because you can get a bunch of internet trolls or internet activists calling MailChimp and be like, hey, there's this radical guy or a radical gal or radical person spewing a hate on whatever. They're a bigot, and they're gonna press the social media platform button, and they're gonna expose MailChimp for being a ridiculous company, an evil organization, and blah blah blah. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Okay. First of all, you don't want to deal with MailChimp to begin with, because they are the biggest one, and they would rather it's the YouTube and Patreon. It's the YouTube and Patreon phenomenon where they're big enough to not care about the fringes. Okay. Don't get now, if they're a company that don't care about the fringes and they're welcome to fringes of society, like us Ancapistanis and us Reformistanis, then I guess, but you still don't want to have them have a mob, internet mob, to go on their internet doorstep and be like, hey, could you shut this person down? And we're gonna do a full blown internet raid on you. An internet raid meaning we're going to talk bad about how awful your newsletter company is doing business with this person over here, which is why I always recommend you pay the actual service to get the, and this applies to the website too. So you don't want to have a something dot squarespace.com or whatever, however they do it, or squarespace.com / whatever, because that way it's, they don't know if you're actually using it. You want to scrub as much of the services that you're doing. The only exception is WordPress.org is the only other exception, because you can always have the hosting company be a totally different company, and you can switch out hosting companies like there's no tomorrow, because there are a bunch of them out there. Frankly, there's a bunch of hosting companies out there, so you can always find a hosting company to host your website for you, for inexpensive or even more expensive to be more secured and whatnot. But anyways, yeah, that's just my thoughts on get yourself a website, get yourself a newsletter. Okay, those two things are good. Those two things should be your forefront. And so what's the next step for me to do this is to get a newsletter for tskjesusfreak.com eventually. But what's going to prevent me from doing that for my personal website is for my side hustle, because I care more about my side hustle than my personal website right now. But yeah, if you're a content creator and you're being worried about being censored, make sure you you pay the minimum amount that you want to pay to get to scrub the newsletter service or the website service that you're using. Okay. Now, the best website service you should use, or one of the better ones out there, is the WordPress.org, because WordPress.org has like what, a third or so, 30%, 25 to 35% of all websites out there use WordPress.org. There's .com. Don't use .com. Okay, do not use .com. .com is stupid. It's stupider than Squarespace. Okay, it's stupider than. It's not. I don't know if it's quite as stupid as Wix, but it's almost as stupid as Wix. Okay, it's almost as stupid as Wix. I haven't really delved into the .com, WordPress.com so much, but Wix is worse. So yeah, I'm sure there's other. I use webs.com. Man, they were the bomb in terms of drag and drop website builder back in the 2000s. And they were taken over by Vistaprint. And Vistaprint just basically dumped them. And I'm like, you had a great website builder, and if you just kind of updated it throughout the years, you could be as big as Squarespace. So it could have been webs.com versus Squarespace in terms of that type of website building. But it just blows my mind when companies are taken over by other companies and the parent company just be like, it's an internet property, we don't care. It just drives me insane. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother thing. But anyways, I'm rambling about how you should get your own website and how you should get your own newsletter, okay? And when you pick a newsletter, pick a newsletter service / product and pay for the minimum amount that you can pay for them to scrub their newsletter promotion off of your newsletter. So if you have to pay for it, pay for it. If you don't have to pay for it, and they're giving you that, and you're like, yeah, you don't have to, like, we're not gonna put our name on it, or we wouldn't put your name on the phone, but you can always take it off. But you don't actually have to pay for it, as long as you don't. If you're doing over 50 or over 100 or over 500, if your list is above X amount, then you have to start paying for it. But other than that, yeah. So here's my 10-minute rant about newsletters and websites. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.